The battlefield stretched across the scorched plains of Theta 7, a world that had become nothing more than a graveyard for two civilizations locked in hatred. Smoke rose from burning wreckage, and the acrid smell of plasma fire hung thick in the air. Ilara crouched behind the twisted remains of a dropship, her rifle clutched tight against her chest, listening to the distant roars of the Krell warriors as they regrouped for another assault. The Krell were apex predators from a world where only the strong survived. Standing nearly 8 feet tall, covered in obsidian scales and armed with claws that could tear through steel, they had been humanity's enemy for 3 brutal years. Diplomacy had failed. Treaties had been broken. Now only war remained. Ilara's squad was gone, scattered or dead. She was alone, waiting for extraction that might never come. Her hands trembled slightly as she checked her ammunition. 12 rounds left. Not enough. That's when she heard it. A sound that didn't belong on a battlefield. Soft, pitiful. A whimper. Against every survival instinct screaming in her mind, Ilara moved toward the sound. She climbed over debris, her boots crunching on shattered glass and spent casings until she found the source. A Krell cub lay trapped beneath a collapsed support beam. It couldn't have been more than a year old. Small by Krell standards, perhaps the size of a large dog. Its scales were still soft, a lighter gray than the adults, and its golden eyes were wide with pain and terror. Blood seeped from a gash along its side where the metal had pinned it down. Raven, she would later learn its name was. But in that moment it was simply a child in pain. Ilara should have walked away, should have left it to die. The Krell had shown humanity no mercy. They had burned colonies, slaughtered civilians, turned entire worlds into ash. This cub would grow into a warrior that might one day kill humans. But Ilara saw something in those golden eyes that transcended species and war. She saw fear. She saw a desperate will to live. She saw a child calling for help that would never come. "Damn it," she whispered. She slung her rifle over her shoulder and gripped the support beam. It was heavy, far heavier than she could normally lift, but adrenaline and determination gave her strength she didn't know she possessed. With a grunt of effort, she heaved the beam aside just enough for the cub to drag itself free. Raven snarled weakly, trying to appear threatening despite its injuries. Ilara held up her hands, showing she meant no harm. Slowly, carefully, she removed her field medkit and approached. "Easy," she murmured, her voice soft. "I'm not going to hurt you." The cub watched her with wary eyes as she cleaned the wound and applied battlefield gel to stop the bleeding. It flinched when she touched the injury but didn't strike. Perhaps it understood on some primal level that this strange two-legged creature was trying to help. Ilara fashioned a makeshift stretcher from debris and fabric, then carefully lifted Raven onto it. The cub was heavier than it looked, but she managed. She had no plan, no destination, only the certainty that leaving the cub here meant its death. For 3 days, Ilara carried Raven through the war-torn landscape. She shared her rations, purifying water for both of them. She changed the cub's bandages and whispered stories to keep it calm when the pain grew too great. Raven began to trust her, its snarls softening to curious chirps whenever Ilara spoke. On the 4th day they were found. A Krell war party emerged from the ruins ahead, weapons raised. Ilara's heart hammered as she slowly stood, placing herself between the warriors and Raven. She had no ammunition left, no way to fight. But she wouldn't abandon the cub now. The lead warrior, a massive male with scars crisscrossing his scales, stepped forward. His claws extended and Ilara braced for death. Then Raven chirped. The warrior froze. His eyes widened as he saw the cub, alive, bandaged, sheltered behind the human. Raven struggled forward on weak legs, calling out in the guttural language of its people. The cub's words were simple, but their meaning was unmistakable. "She saved me." The warrior's claws retracted. Slowly, with visible effort, he lowered his weapon. The other Krell followed suit. For a long moment, no one moved. Two species that had known only hatred and violence stood face to face. And between them was a child that should have died but lived because one human chose mercy over revenge. The warrior approached Ilara. She didn't flinch, even as he towered over her. He reached out one massive hand and placed it gently on her shoulder. Not a threat, but an acknowledgement. Then he carefully gathered Raven into his arms, cradling the cub with surprising tenderness. Before leaving, the warrior spoke. Ilara didn't understand the words, but she understood their weight. "A promise," A debt within a week, the war changed. The story spread through both human and Krell ranks. The tale of a human soldier who saved an enemy child when she had every reason to let it die. Krell warriors began refusing orders to fire on human medics. Human soldiers started leaving wounded Krell with medical supplies rather than finishing them. Peace talks resumed, this time in earnest. Both sides, it seemed, were exhausted by a war neither could win. Alara's choice became a symbol, a reminder that even enemies could recognize each other's humanity, or in the Krell's case, their personhood. The treaty was signed 6 months later. Historians would debate the political and military factors that ended the human-Krell war, but soldiers on both sides knew the truth. The war stopped because one woman saw a wounded child and chose compassion. Years later, Alara would receive a visitor. Raven, now grown into a young warrior, came to find the human who had saved its life. The cub she had carried through hell had become an ambassador, dedicated to ensuring that the peace held. They didn't share a language. Not really. But when Raven placed a clawed hand on Alara's shoulder, just as the warrior had years before, no translation was needed. Some bonds transcend species. Some choices echo through history. And sometimes the bravest thing a soldier can do is refuse to be a soldier at all.